welcome to our TV. So today, Sue and I gonna talk about signs and how universe is telling you the sign this is not the way. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. And from our experience, we're gonna share little stories. But before, I'm gonna give you guys a little like signs. Like usually, somewhere in your mind or something, the small voices keep on telling like you gotta do this, you gotta do this, like very very small voice, and you're kind of brushing off, but you keep on hearing it. That's one sign. Or you're going to keep on hearing the music and the certain lyrics, or you're going to see the angel number like 888, 777. Doesn't matter which number, but you're going to keep on hearing it, or you're going to keep on seeing certain like word over and over. That's the sign from the universe. But today we're going to share about our personal experience, what it was, and then how universe and our spiritual teams communicate us to put us into the right direction when we are doing something else. So Sue, please share about your experience.
Okay, hi, good morning. Um, I'll just talk about my time in the Army, my experience going into the Army. I was 40
Mm-hmm.
and decided that was the best choice for me, from our family. And so it took probably 8 months for me to even get the physical. And I had to look up the chain of command and kind of complain that I wasn't being granted a physical. And of course, that was frowned upon. But I didn't realize I was pretty determined that I was going to do this thing. I trained for quite some time to be ready. And so I finally, my first sign that it wasn't the right life path for me was the fact that the physical wasn't happening. That's
How
the
long?
first entry point.
How
Say
long?
again?
How long does it usually take to do the physical? Not 8 months, but how long
No,
is physical?
no, no. And I would say for, the younger entrants, into the military, once they've had some preliminary things done with their recruiter, that physical takes a couple of weeks
So that's
to schedule.
unusual. It's unusual. It took you 8 months. That's a huge sign.
True, absolutely. So that was my first sign, and it was pretty big. But I didn't listen, and then so I finally got my physical, and I went into basic training and all of that kind of stuff. And I had several people before I left for the Army. Some people that I really put a lot of um, I have a lot of respect for and have worked with in my life. And they said, why are you doing this? Yeah, I mean, you really need to be here for your family. And I had a young son at the time, and my parents were elderly, and I was caring for them quite a bit too. And I said, oh, it's just going to take a little basic training and advanced individual training, and I'll be home. I'll be taking care of these people again. It's just going to be a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm. How long was the
So
training?
there were some signs. And then basic training was almost 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then advanced individual training was another 2.5 months. So it didn't seem to me at the time like a tremendous amount of time to be away, but yet there were things that happened while I was away, and that caused me great concern, especially with my mother and also my father. But my son had become depressed. And so my husband was juggling all these balls, and then he started having a lot of difficulty with my absence. So the strain on the family became very apparent, which added strain to me. And then the final sign, while I was in advanced individual training, I became ill. Being out in Texas, I had some allergies that I was not used to having here in New York. And I was hospitalized for 3 days.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and even though I had, because I was a social worker for years before I went into the Army, and my program was to do behavioral health specialist. Okay. So I had, I don't know, I think a 98 in class. And then by the time I got out of the hospital, they informed me that I had missed too much class, too many hours. They have very specific regulations, and that they had to take me out of my program. I had to be what they call recycled, and they put me in dental science. So, you know, that was the door kind of slamming in my face, because that is not what I had signed up to do. That was not my intention. I was going to, you know, go into behavioral science, and then as a person with a 4-year degree, I was going to, you know, go into and become a, well, I wanted to get my master's degree also, which they offered in the military, but I was going to be an officer, you know, and all of that just just closed. It was like, nope, not for you. And luckily I had a very good first sergeant who, when I explained, you know, what was going on and whatnot and so forth, I was able to get, you know, a compassionate release, especially with my parents having such difficulties with their illnesses and whatnot. That was very fortunate, because a lot of people are not able to just slide out of the military like that. They were going to send me to Germany, and I wouldn't have been able to bring my family. My mother wouldn't have survived the flight.
And, so that was a big sign, like doing something you don't want to do, and you have to move to a foreign country.
Yeah, and you know, the interesting point was, out of 32 people in my class, I was the only, no, there was one other person who was married. Married with children. And I was the only one that got sent overseas, that got orders to go to Germany to practice dental science.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. Everybody else was single and freewheeling, you know, so the amount of money that it would have taken for the military to send us and pack us, our whole household up and send us to Germany, it boggled the mind. But so there were very clear signs along the way that that wasn't the right path for me. Yeah, and I'll also say
they would pick like someone who is single first.
Absolutely. I mean, it would make more sense, wouldn't it? Why would you take somebody? Yeah, I mean, yeah, financially for the military to take somebody like me with married and kids and send them to Germany, it's a little foolish when you could send somebody who's single. Anyway, that's just my opinion, but the signs were clear. And then I also want to mention the easy exit for me. It was not that difficult for me to get out. That was another sign. So sometimes, you know, it felt very right. It felt very the way it was supposed to go. It wasn't what typical people did that were in the military, that were enlisted. However, I was put in the place of this first sergeant who also, by the way, was studying for her master's in psychology, so that didn't hurt. But that person I met along the way, who was paramount to getting me to where I needed to be, was there. And that wasn't by accident.
So you had to meet that person. So that was a step, but you didn't have to stay in the military, I guess.
That's right. I mean, like I said, there are individuals who had family circumstances that were far more dire than mine, I would say. Like, for example, there was a gentleman whose wife had brain cancer, and they weren't letting him out. They weren't even letting him go home for a period of time. And when I learned about that, he was in another company, but we were neighbors. So we talked at Chow Hall. And I mean, when I heard the circumstances of what his situation were, and discovered that, you know, his first sergeant was totally unwilling to allow him to go home, it just blew my mind.
Wow.
Brain cancer, you know, that's pretty serious. That's as serious as it gets. So again, you know, when I applied all of these things to my understanding of the whole experience, there were very definite signs that was not the path for me. And I had planned to put 20 years into the military. I mean, it was a life plan for me. And the universe said, it's not where you're meant to be. What about you?
Were you aware of the sign in the beginning, or you kind of started aware after things started to get more difficult and difficult?
No, I was headstrong through the whole thing. I was very determined. My husband and I had sat down, and I had told him, you know, what my plan was, what I wanted to do. You know, I want to go in, and then I want to get my master's degree, and then I want to go in as a transition into becoming an officer and blah, blah, blah. So we had a plan and he agreed to it. He said, okay, yeah, I think this is really the best path for you and for us as a family. There was a lot of security there that, the military would offer. And I had a desire to help veterans and service people. I had studied quite a bit about PTSD and that sort of thing. So I really had this burning desire to help people. And that was one of the avenues that I thought was going to be really great. Just be right in the military. I'd be right there on base. I could be of assistance all the time. Well, that wasn't quite the way that my service to the world is playing out, and that's great. But no, I did not have any awareness of the signs as it was going on. I just looked at it as a little bit of stumbling blocks, and so I pretty much put it out of my mind and pushed forward. I was like a bulldog. But let me tell you, I suffered quite a bit for that resistance. Yeah. But it turned out in the end, it was only in hindsight that I could see the signs. But now that I've had that experience, I'm much more aware of the signs. When something's, so it really did open me up quite a bit to being more conscientious of the indicators in my life that let me know whether something's going, whether I'm going in the right direction or whether I'm fighting something that, for example, being involved in my children's lives. If I try to become controlling of outcomes, I experience a lot of pain. When I sit back and I support them, but I just let things play out the way they're supposed to, I'm much more calm. Yeah. And so what I find is that if you're listening to the sign, you're watching and paying attention to the signs, and you're going with the flow, you're going to feel that, and it's going to feel good. And what about you? What kind of experience had caused you to create?
Mine is similar, that going into entertainment industry was my dream from, when I was a little girl. So I did everything, anything to get in. And in the beginning, I kind of thought like, I should forget about it because I was kind of like pessimistic. But when I was with my ex-husband, his family was extremely positive and supportive, and they said, you should do what you want to do. That was a part of the reason I wanted to marry him, because I loved his family. And then they're like, you should go, you should do it. So I started doing auditioning and modeling and stuff like that, and I started doing movies. And then the things led me one way to another, and I started making my first movie as a producer. And then I thought this is the way, because things are going well. And I did have a support and everything. And then everything was set up. Like I met the right person, like I met a big mentor in the movie industry, and he was very supportive of me. And I thought this is good. So I thought, you know what, I want to just make like a huge empire with other people, and then so I can influence people and raise consciousness of earth by doing that. So me and my business partner, my ex-business partner, we know each other about over 12 years. And then we kind of decided to do business together, doing branding. And then he had a huge connection with China. So we started doing business with China, that he could hook us up with very important people over there. And then I brought the people I knew as our team. We had a Tony, amazing person, and we had a banker, amazing person. And then my business partner brought in the person from studio background. He was a retired executive. And then we had a great team. So, we thought success was imminent. And then I was kind of like cautious in the beginning, because I don't know how much we can trust, like how they do business in China, because I heard that they are not that ethical, and
Okay.
they don't go into like a Western style of business or Japanese style. Japanese people are very slow to make a decision, but once they make a decision, they're gonna follow through. So takes time, but they're very sincere usually. So I wasn't really sure about it, but we kept, that was the first sign I had a bad feeling. But like after we started the meeting, not that we, my business partner were talking about all these important people, it sounded like a legit. So everything started to look very what you gonna call it, trustworthy. So eventually all of us got calmed down, and then we started introducing other people we know to do our business. Basically, we are importing, we are trying to import US movie to China, and that's what they wanted. And that was originally $1 billion for them and $1 million deal for us. So it was huge. And then we wanted to do this deal so we can get close to studios and we can create like a, relationship and start doing producing. That was my aim, you know. And then we worked our very hard for 3 years. And then what happened was basically they decided to raise their financing through our credibility. So investment money or whatever. So they didn't say that, but that's my assumption. I assume that's allegedly they were doing, I think. So what happened was we delivered everything, but we won't get paid. So that was my door shut down moment. And what I lost personally was credibility and then reputation, because I did introduce certain important people in order for this deal to go through. So
So you had your contacts that brought up the revenue and the interest, like investment money into this production that were involved in this.
Not the production. They had their own company, but they are trying to raise their investment money.
The investment money. So they used your people for that. Wow.
Yeah, our credibility. So basically, they looked credible and they are legit people, but the point is, it didn't go through. So all doors shut down, not just money, but my reputation, my credibility, everything. And I was told a lot before that, like when I started awakening, like Archangel Raphael was saying, why don't you start serving others through doing healing and stuff? But you know how you are a guide, they don't tell you what to do. Like he suggested, right? So I told him I'm not really interested in doing that. My dream is doing an entertainment thing, and that's what I'm doing. So next thing he suggested was, oh, that's fine. You can just learn all these skills in order for you to heal yourself. So while I was working in entertainment industry, I took all of these credentials as a hobby, you know. And then as a part-time, when people in the industry asked me to do some healing, I did here and there, but I was like never taking it seriously that this was my path, like me doing coach and this kind of stuff. I never thought this was what I was supposed to be doing. And then door was slammed shut. So I had to think of like what to do, right? And then I finished all of credentials, including like quantum hypnosis. So I was like, why don't I just combine everything and start doing my own business? Because I was like, I can't do entertainment stuff again because it's gonna take time. And then like I spend all of my energy and my connections and everything, and it's just damaged, you know. I can go back if I wanted to, but that didn't seem like the way, because everything shut. And then by then I was awake enough to understand, like, if you are supposed to be doing something, like one thing led to another, and then you go the right path, and then this doesn't seem like it. So I realized, okay, this must be the big huge sign that universe is stopping me to keep on going this path. Because just like you, I was super determined, because that was my childhood dream. And then I did like doing healing stuff and other stuff as a hobby, but I never thought you can make a business out of it, because I was a very left brain sided person. So I couldn't really it was not realistic for me to make a business out of this kind of work.
Right. Yeah, I was in the same kind of mindset like you're saying, with the Army. It's I had been told in my 20s that I had all the abilities to do what I'm doing now, and I just didn't believe it. I thought I had to have a plaque on the wall and all these degrees and certifications, and so I did that too. But it's funny how as a society we're kind of told that you
Yeah.
have to do everything in this certain way, and even though we get the guidance that we can do it another way, we don't necessarily believe it. We have to go through these trials and tribulations. So what were your main sign with this situation and the
Things
production,
weren't
the movie?
going well at all. It's not about production, it's a distribution. Things weren't going well. Like
Yeah.
by the time we are about to get paid from them, like these another like stuff happened, so it got delayed. So have to wait more. It's just nothing was smooth.
And you kind of said that you had a sign right away in the beginning. You sort of had a trust issue. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I had a bad feeling about it, but I just thought, once you started using your logic and the mind, and after they started showing the evidence, they seem like a very trustworthy people and a big company and everything. You're just gonna brush away your feeling, because it's not like, solid.
That's a really good point, though. I mean, that's something that I think can be very helpful for individuals, whether you're talking about a relationship or you're talking about a job or whatever it is in your life. I mean, we brush off, a lot of people can brush off what your gut feeling is, what your intuition is telling you, what your feeling is,
Yeah,
because the
and by
mind,
then I was awakened, so I should trust my my senses, right? But
yeah,
I was
but we're
like, before.
programmed, aren't we? We're programmed from a very young age to be sensible.
Yeah,
What
and
makes
plus,
sense?
after you see the facts, like, okay, these people are this big, and know these people and that people, and this company is big, like, you're gonna trust them.
Yeah. Our mind can definitely override our intuition, and I wonder what your thoughts are about in relationship, how that can
Oh
happen.
yeah, for sure. Like, in the beginning when you meet the person, you weren't sure, like, this is a reason why I tell my client, especially single people, don't get emotional when you meet a person during dating. Just observe them, because once you started to emotionally invest into someone, your intuition doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
you know
So, what do you think some of maybe our spirit team is sending us signs? What do you think some of the signs can be when somebody's first entering a relationship that it might not be right for them?
you don't feel good, like, like one of the stuff I heard was, as a female, you don't physically feel good, like, you don't like his voice, or you don't like his smell, or something, like physically kind of like aches you. When he touches you, you kind of feel icky,
Uh-huh.
like touch your hand, like you feel icky. We have to trust that biological, like, instinct.
Mhm.
Like, nothing wrong with him about his credentials. He looks good on paper. He looks good, like, good candidate to get married, to, when you look
Uh-huh.
at, on the paper. But
Yeah.
when your body is saying, like, something like, oh, I just don't like his smell or whatever, for example, we have to listen to that.
Yeah, and I dated a couple of guys back in the day where, you know, my body was right on with that person. You know, the physical attraction was there. They were good looking. They looked all right on paper. I won't say great because I dated a couple of chumps, but anyway, you know, like I was just into this guy sort of thing. And then I wasn't paying attention to stuff like how he treated other people. I'm
Oh
thinking of one
yeah.
guy in particular. I'm thinking of one guy in particular. I mean, this guy was nuts about. Oh, I won't get too personal, but I mean, all the buttons were clicking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started noticing along the way that, at least initially, my first signs were how he was treating his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of fluffed it off because, you know, when you got that sweet attraction going on and your hormones are going and life looks beautiful, you don't necessarily look at some of the other things that are going on in the picture because our love hormones can just really take over our brains and make
Yeah.
them soggy, I think.
We forget to observe instead of like study the feeling, about the guy.
Yeah.
That is not always a good idea. Like when you're talking about military experience and the physical reaction, I can share something with you. Like I don't want to get into too personal thing because it's very personal. But once I started to realize that I'm no longer in love with this person,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really be intimate with him anymore. So I tried my best, because he loves me. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started having a reaction, like a physical reaction.
Yeah.
Like I
That
didn't know
happened for me
about
too.
I didn't know anything about endometriosis, but after like I read medical description, I was having the same exact symptom. So I told him, and then I went to the doctor, like gynecologist, and the gynecologist told me like I'm having endometriosis. So we're convinced. And then what's happened was I met the doctor from Europe. He was amazing. So he kind of like told, he wasn't gynecologist, but he listened to my talk, and he was like, why don't we just do MRI? And then we did the MRI, and we didn't find anything.
So your body was really giving you signals.
And
It
he
was
told me
letting you
like,
know.
yeah, he told me whatever my reaction toward this guy was, psychological refusal. Like I didn't want to be with him intimately like that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to, because that was what I'm supposed to be, doing.
As you were married, you felt that was part of the gig, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I couldn't. And then I was stunned about that. So
Right.
when, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, when you started having physical reaction in that kind of situation, maybe that's a good sign as well. I wanted to share with you guys about that.
Absolutely. That is so important to realize because we will cause, our bodies will assist us in getting out of something if we need to, you know, whether it be a job or a relationship or whatever it is where we persist in something that isn't working for us. Our body will start, especially in relationship. Absolutely. That intimacy isn't just all about a body connection, it's about a mind and an emotional connection.
Yeah, mind, body, spirit, everything,
Yeah.
So once you are o- off, or you don't feel anything toward that person, and you're forcing yourself to function your body like eventually started to align with your soul voice, like truth, how you really feel about the person.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And
that's
then, you know, you don't want to let that go too long, right? You don't want to let that go too long because
yeah, and
that
then
missed sign can turn into physical illness,
yeah,
right?
it
It could
is.
turn into
It
an
does.
actual thing.
it's gonna turn out like anxiety and stress, and then it's gonna go into all other diseases show up. Because when I look at the client energetically, when I see the energy blocks in their field, and then when you see the energy blocks in same area, and then once they started to accumulate those blocks, it's going to turn into physical illness, like
physical illness, right? Manifestation, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
So what are some of the other signs you think besides the physical that we can maybe look for if relationships not, what do you think? One of the things that comes to mind for me is just the desire to spend time with somebody.
oh yeah,
That
naturally,
one,
naturally,
yeah.
right?
Well, if you're kind of like, you don't want to get out of bed, or you'd rather spend, you find yourself constantly making plans with other people, just in, you sort of start recognizing that that's an effort not to spend time with your beloved. I think that's a big clue.
Yeah, like if
that
you do group activity more, so you don't have to spend the time alone with each other, that's a big sign.
or if your significant other is doing that,
Yeah,
maybe you want to spend more time with them, and they just keep finding excuses, or they're working later and later at night. There's one. That was my first marriage. That was my first sign. No, it wasn't my first sign, but it was getting to the point of extreme awareness by the time because he would work later and later, and he wouldn't let go of his second job even though we didn't need it. Would not spend any time with myself or our son together. So, after a while, you just sit there and go, maybe he just doesn't want to be with me. And it's
well,
hard.
we are
It's
not
not
the
easy.
guys, so it's difficult to understand what they're thinking. But when we look at the sign goals, it's just, I feel like observing what's going on outside is good too, but like observing within yourself what's going on, that's like a sure sign of it.
Yeah. And
You
I
don't
wasn't
feel,
listening. I wasn't connected to that at all. Now that you're bringing that up, I was maybe 21, and I just was not connected to that. So I think if we can help people get more connected to that inner feeling, that inner voice, and that's a really good
yeah.
point.
I mean, it might be hard for guys, but I'm assuming like people who are listening to this is female, like a lot of girls. So, when we get in touch with our feelings, like, does it feel good? Like, are we doing this because that's what we are supposed to be doing? Whatever that is, supposed to be saying, supposed to be acting. When we have a girlfriend role, there's a certain thing we are required to do, right? Or wife or whatever. And then, do we really want to do this? When we really ask ourselves honestly, that's like a good sign to ask ourselves always.
And just for me, I'll just share this. You know, as we've talked about, I've been with my husband for some time. It's 28 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And with or without the wedding ring, I'll tell you that every day I still choose him.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a good question to ask yourself if there's confusion is, do I still pick him today?
Yeah.
Yes. And he still picks me too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've actually had the conversation where it's, if the day comes where one or the other of us, the answer is, and we don't have this conversation every day, obviously, but you know what I'm talking about. It's a general understanding and agreement that if there comes a day where one or the other of us, the answer is no, I don't choose you anymore, then that's going to be all right. It's going to hurt, and it's going to be probably difficult, for both of us, for whatever period of time it takes to grieve a long-term relationship. But there
Yeah.
has to be a choice. And, wedding ring or not, are you still picking that person today? Would you still pick them today? Say if you didn't have the wedding ring, right? Would you
Or
still choose them?
bank account, like if he has nothing, absolutely nothing, are you going to choose that person? That's a
There
good
you go.
question. You know,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I talked to my girlfriend and then she, asked me, what's the decision factor. So I always tell her, look at him and see if he has nothing. Do you still want to be with him? Do you
That's
tell
really
him?
good.
Do you tell him, honey, it's okay. Like we're gonna we do it together, and then we can get ourselves back. If he suddenly lose everything one day,
Boy, that's a great exercise. I love it. Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you can kind of strip everything. Like, do you like him because of what he has or his position, or do you like him because it's him?
I think ultimately, we get the signs whether something's feeling right, so male or female, we have to get connected to internal knowing, which is feeling. And our body's going to tell us, like you said, you're going to feel something is right or not pretty much right from the beginning. So if we can get connected to those signs,
Yeah, but
ultimately it's going to serve us in whether a relationship is
what
worth
I'm
getting into.
what I'm like wondering is, guys, they are not in touch with feelings as much as we do, unless they are awakened or spiritual person. So in that case, how can a guy see the signs, like when you look at the facts?
Mhm.
So like feeling is one way, like for us a female to use as a guiding post, but what about guys? And then I would say, like, if physical symptom is very, very I guess trustworthy facts, you can trust, because if you can you constantly feel drained, or you constantly don't feel good, and then mind started telling you like, oh, I'm just overthinking or whatever, just like how I was dealing with my um the branding business. Like mind always takes over, but when for you guys, like male, men, when your body is that telling you something, want to trust that instead of putting meaning of it, like logically.
Mhm.
That's what I feel like guys can follow as a signs, because when
Yeah,
you
absolutely. You have to, men are not taught to pay attention to their bodies. As a matter of fact, I'd say quite the opposite in socialization. For example, if they grew up being athletic and they would injure themselves on the field, a lot of them are, oh, suck it up, don't be a puss, all these kind of things, these messages, which is don't pay attention to your body, don't pay attention, don't listen when your body is telling you it's had enough, you need to take a break. So I think being very aware for gentlemen to be very aware of their body, start feeling the body, don't just take it for granted. And, because it's very easy for men to be in touch with their bodies, I believe, when they're aroused and they're interested in intimacy and things like that, because that's what society told them it's okay, to feel your body then. But other than that, so let's get in touch with the body, like you said, Erica. And I
yeah.
really think that if they're not consciously making the effort to tune into what their body is feeling and emotions as well, the emotional aspect is big. Now, how do I feel when I walk into the room with this person? Take your temperature. Guys aren't used to thinking that way for the most part. Like you said, there are some that are, many that are spiritually enlightened and or maybe awake, and they have been for all their lives, and so
Yeah,
they're
so they
consciously
can,
aware.
but majority of them aren't. So following feeling might be very difficult for them because they are not in touch with feelings. They
Yeah,
might be in touch with their mind, and then if mind is like keep on telling you one thing, and then your body is keep on telling you other thing, maybe it's a good idea to pay attention to body. Like maybe telling you the signal, like similar to what my body was telling myself, that you are kind of lying to yourself.
I was just listening to an interview with Matthew McConaughey. He was on the Joe Rogan show. And I thought what was really cool is that he had kept a journal for many, many years. And that's not something you normally associate with a guy, but he just did. And I thought it was brilliant because he would get in touch with internalize and self-exploration with the times where he was having difficulty, but he would also, this really impressed me, he talked about internalizing when things were going good and going back into the journal and just allowing himself to really process what are the elements to things are going right. A lot of times we don't go into self-reflection until things are going wrong. But what about when things are going right? I mean, geez, I want to grab that with both hands, and I really want to pay attention to what that feels like.
Yeah,
right?
for someone like, before awakening, I was mostly left brain sided analytical. So I was more of the guy than female. So internally. So the person like that or male in general, you can follow, you can observe, what you said about when things are going well, what kind of analysis you can do to pinpoint like what this is, and when things doesn't go well, then pinpoint like characteristic of what this is. So you don't have to get in touch with feelings, but you can observe and analyze and see what matches. So I feel like, yeah, thank you, Sue, you helped me. I feel like guys can use that as a guiding path instead of feelings, because it's very difficult for people like that, or people how I used to be. It's very difficult to follow feelings. You're only gonna follow facts and what you have experienced before. So
I think he would also, I think he would also write about how he was feeling around things. But I'm like you, I'm more left brain. And I'll tell you, I do a lot of writing and lists, and I didn't for many years, but I do now because sometimes just turning back a few months in the pages and where I struggled the most with something, and this is relationships I'm talking about. And I want to put a little blurb too there about the feelings. So I think it's, even if you weren't necessarily socialized to be in touch with your feelings or your emotions, I was more brain oriented like yourself. It's not something that can't be overcome. I just used a double negative. I'm very sorry. You can overcome it. Yeah, okay. And I just think, having heard that about Matthew McConaughey, I was like, that's so exciting. Just write it down. Just put it in there. Just, he even put in what his foods, the kind of foods he was eating around these times too. And insight is insight, right? But you can get in touch with your feelings if you become consciously aware and decide that you're going to. It's a decision. It's really, and that's where the work is, right? They say relationships are work.
And I feel like millennials, they are more in touch with feelings. They have a better balance between female and male within themselves. So guys in millennial generations or younger, they are much better to get in touch with feelings. So that plus journaling, that's probably a good idea. So before we wrap up, do you have the biggest tip you can give to audience?
If you feel on any level that something's not right at the beginning, don't look for reasons to make it right. Just go with it. That's mine. What's yours?
Well, I'm similar. Like, it's really important to get in touch with your heart instead of mind. Mind always screw us up. Try to look for anything logically fit into whatever the belief we are always holding on to. So heart doesn't really it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense when you meet this person. You don't feel good about this person, and then your mind is gonna say, "Oh, you don't even know her, or you don't even know him. You shouldn't be so judgmental about it." But when you have a bad feeling, trust about that. Just trust your feelings.
I agree. Because, if we don't, our spirit team which has agreed to help us along our life path, and they know what our soul plan is, they're going to give you bigger and bigger signs, and eventually they're going to whack you. They're going to shut the door. They're going to shut the door in your face if you don't listen, and there's going to be a lot of anguish along the way. So, but this, like you said, get heart centered. It doesn't have to make sense. If you're in touch with your heart, that's where the universe gives its biggest messages.
Oh yeah, that's how our higher self or spiritual team try to whisper us, this is not the right way. It's just get that feeling, you know.
And like you said earlier, sometimes it's like you hear a song and the lyrics say something to you, and you're like, wow, that is just so on point for what I'm going through right now. That's a sign.
Yeah, that is a sign.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to talk about with you guys today. And I hope this is going to be educational for all of you. So we see you guys next Friday. Please share, subscribe, like. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you, Erica. Have a great one.
We're going to see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.